All right, hey everybody, we are back. Today I have a guest with me, a fiddle player, multi-instrumentalist, Dave Agee. How you doing?
Very good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. Um, so I met you through my ex-girlfriend was really into Irish music, and I came down to some of your guys' jams
Right.
that you guys have all over town, your little scene that you have here, and I was definitely pretty impressed with your playing, man. It seemed like a lot of people were kind of respecting your abilities in that scene, and it was just cool to watch you play. And so I definitely thank you for coming in and doing a little chat here. But
Sure.
for people that don't know you very well, talk a little bit about what you've done.
Whew. Um, well, to go back to the beginnings, when I know that I got a guitar when I was 9 years old because I saw a picture of me with my first guitar and it had a date on the photograph. And
So you know it happened.
yeah,
It definitely happened.
but why it happened, I can't remember. I can't remember if I begged my parents, get me a guitar, and they bought, the crummiest guitar you could get from Sears. That would discourage any child from ever wanting to learn to play because it thick strings high off the fretboard,
Yeah.
hurt your fingers. But something inside me, I had some kind of a drive to
Yeah.
want to play. My parents knew nothing about music. Nobody in my family I knew of ever played an instrument. But I don't know. That's been so long ago I can't remember.
And interesting, most people have like horror stories or something, like their parents made them or they loved it,
Oh,
they
I
couldn't
know.
this or that.
Right.
It's funny that you were kind of indifferent with remembering. That's interesting.
And so I started taking lessons at a local music store. And this is the time when the Beatles had come out and the whole British invasion stuff that I was listening to on the radio, local radio that I loved. And I couldn't find any of these guys that knew any of this music. So I learned all the basics, of chords and all that. And then my parents got me an electric guitar. I think they got it from a local drugstore place called Katz, and I think they had to order it through. We had a next door neighbor that worked there, so it was a harmony guitar and a little harmony amp, and which at the time, if they'd have known better, they probably would have bought me a better guitar if they'd have known.
Right.
But now those guitars are really kind of sought after because they're rare.
Yeah.
You know.
It's funny, yeah.
And guys like, in the Black Keys, you'll see them play. I've seen him play that exact guitar that I had.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I don't know. I quit taking lessons after about a year, and I just started listening to records and learning everything I could by ear, and never really learned to read music then. And it was just, listening to Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton and the Stones and the Beatles. Everybody just started soaking that stuff up and listening and playing. And played in a few garage bands and all that. Then I don't know. It was probably 1976. A friend of mine, Gary Bury, who used to be a singer here in town. He used to sing in a band called Three Trails West, a country swing type band, and he told me, so you got to go down to Winfield, and I was like, oh, I don't know, it's not really my scene, and he said, no, you got to go. We got to go to this. So we went down there, and it turned my world around. And by that time my ears were starting to hurt a little bit from loud music, and I was thinking maybe this is. I said, man, there's got all the energy you've got in rock and roll, but without all the pain.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, without all the pain.
And
That's funny.
so I mainly was influenced with the bluegrass music at that point, seeing Sam Bush and Norman Blake and some of these guys, and I went home and I just started trying to learn how to flat pick my guitar, listening to these albums, and then I bought a mandolin, and there was a guy in town an old man who sold instruments out of his house that I found, and started buying stuff from him, got a fiddle and a mandolin, and just started, picking around on it, listening to records.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then I was in Westport, saw some guys playing on the street, busking.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw they had a guitar and said, "Hey, you mind if I join in with you?" Okay, you know. So I started joining in, and I said, "Hey, well, thanks," you know. And they said, "No, stay."
Mm-hmm.
So I kept playing with them, and pretty soon I was in their band.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
And they got this guy. He was a mountain dulcimer player, really good. In fact, he won down at Winfield, first place.
Oh wow.
Down there. And we started listening to Irish music. He was doing some Irish songs and all that, and I thought it was kind of nice. And then I was at a local used record store, and I bought an album on the Chieftains. It was Chieftains 7, because I liked the album cover. I thought it looked cool. Got it home, and I was just mesmerized with the music. I'd never heard anything like it before.
Yeah.
The arrangements, all the different kinds of instruments they were using. And I just started listening to that a lot. And then I met Gerald Trimble, who's a local musician who plays the viola da gamba. And but at that time he was playing guitar, and the bouzouki was kind of his main instrument. And then he started playing the citern, which is more a 10-stringed instrument, double-stringed instrument. And he had a band. It was the only Irish band in town called Talisman. And so I knew they were playing. We used to have a folk club at 39th and Main called the Fool Killer Theater. And I'd gone there. I'd played there. I was playing before this happened. I was playing in bluegrass bands.
Yeah.
And played there a lot. Knew the place pretty well. And so I knew they were playing. And so I wanted to go see them. Well, you could get in free if you do a walk-on. So I took my fiddle. I'd been trying to learn some Irish tunes. I mean, I was terrible at it, but I got up on stage, played these tunes, and stayed for the concert. And after the concert, Gerald grabbed me. He said, "Hey, come here. How'd you like to join our band?"
Yeah, that's cool.
So I ended up in this band and stayed with that till it finally ended. And then me and some other guys started a band called Scardiglen that went on to be a pretty big deal. And my wife was in the band, and started just, started getting deeper into the music, learning more about arrangements. And anyways, I mean, that was kind of from then on, cool, I played in many Irish bands.
Sure, yeah. So you said something really interesting. You're the first person to mention Winfield on the show.
Oh, really?
And you, how it usually goes is exactly how you described. Everybody's like, "Dude, you've got to go," and everybody's like, "I don't want to," and they're like, "No, you don't understand." It's a pretty fun time, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
especially this was my first time there was in 1976.
Yeah.
And I was like 22 years old.
So that'd have been like 10 in, 5 into the start of it, right?
I think it first year might have been 72.
Right, so that was right at the beginning of it. Yeah.
And there weren't, not very many people were coming down there.
Right.
And so it was, I just thought I'd died and gone to heaven.
I know. When you go down there, it's fun. I mean,
and I noticed, every year it got a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger. And I think by 1982 or 3, I'd kind of had it.
Yeah.
My friend who took me down there originally has still gone every year. Still goes today. I haven't been back since then. It's not that I wouldn't go, but I don't know. It just always seems hard to get down there now.
It is. It's a long ways down there, right?
And it's just so crowded.
The fun thing about it is that why I thought it was so fun is because from my background of playing classical and you show up with your tux, and everything's all proper, and when I went down there one year, I opened up my case because you go down there and you bring your instrument, right? And it's just a big bluegrass folk kind of festival, and you bring your instrument, and there's 2 big campgrounds, and you can just go like walk around and like hang with people and play. And so one day I open up my instrument and like this cricket jumps out, of my case, and so I was just like, what, and so I go to my, couple friends, I'm like, "Dude, a cricket just," and they're like, "And?" That was their reaction, that was just so funny to me how like chill it was and how totally different like situation from my own learning. And just the idea of like the jump in is something that I want to talk to you about a little later here, but the kind of just jump in and jam with people mentality is so cool to me. Like that's just so neat, and how the two cultures are just so different of the classical culture and then that example. And
I was at that time I was going to jams up here in Kansas City, and mostly kind of around bluegrass, old-timey music. I wasn't into the Irish music yet. And there was another young lady who was getting into that music too, playing the violin, and we'd be at these jam sessions, and she pulled me aside one time. She said, "You know, you're really not any better than I am, but you act like you are. I mean, you get in there and play like you really know." I said, "Well, I don't know what else to do but just jump in and do it."
So was that a compliment on your courage?
I think I think it was kind of a compliment on, like, you know,
you go for it.
Why are you going? Because I don't feel like I can do that.
Yeah.
And
not a kind of underhanded, like, you think
well,
you're good.
who knows?
No, that's funny.
But
But we know those kind of things, like we see them at other people. You know, you can tell there's people that maybe aren't quite as good technique-wise from us, but they have that quality where they go for it. Like especially during improv, you'll notice this.
Oh yeah.
You can see it in their face. They're fighting through it. You know, they mess up and they no, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. You know.
Well, that's the only way to learn it.
Yeah. So let's actually go to that, because you just mentioned it. So. Like I said, my ex-girlfriend took me down to some of these jams that you guys have, and it's a very similar mentality to Winfield that we just talked about, where, so again, you guys all kind of have a sit in a circle kind of a thing,
right?
And then you know, kind of talk about the jams.
Okay, well, there's in this folk world like that, we have Irish music, you have old time music, and then you have bluegrass jams. So there's in Kansas City, there's not a lot of old time jams. There's old time players, but there's really not old time jams. You know, you kind of have to go other places sometimes to get to find that. And the way Irish jams are conducted and the way old time jams are conducted are pretty much the same. In bluegrass, it's far more regimented. You usually have a kind of a conductor, a guy who's like.
Who's running it?
Who's running it, and he'll say, "Okay, you start and pick." You know, so you can pick any song or any tune, and you play it, and then everybody just, if they know it or wants to, they can join in with you. They might take turns, take an improv break, you know, in the bluegrass way, and then when that's done, the next person goes.
Yeah.
In a old time jam or Irish jam, it's way more free, and anybody can start a tune whenever, kind of whenever you feel like. You can, you know, you learn to have, there's certain etiquette, of course, you know, you don't like just run over everybody. I mean, you shouldn't, you know, like just starting a tune every time. When one's done, you know, you're going to start the next one.
Does everybody know that?
I think I don't know that everybody knows that. I mean, I think if you're a regular, you do. You know, there might be some new people that maybe
you hope they figure it out.
Yeah, you hope they figure it out, or you know, you could take them aside and say, "This is kind of how it's done," and just, you know, be kind. You know.
See, as a side note, one of the reasons, literally, for this show is that in the blues world, that little that was so funny. That little brush comment where you said, you know, you just take them aside and see in blues world that never happens. The take them aside and explain to them. That moment never happens. So we have the same crap happening over and over and over with the same person or multiple people, you know. And I think that's cool that maybe there's I don't know, you know, it's kind of a different topic, but I wonder if there's kind of a different respect level in those two societies where people are just kind of more clueless in the blues society, or people are just chicken. That's another way to look at it, where they don't want to come up and do any of the confrontation. That's kind of a whole nother topic, but...
yeah, and I think that, you know, it doesn't need to be confrontational, you know. You know, it's a kindness, really, that you're trying to convey to someone to...
Yeah. So on the jams, like, one thing I've noticed about the Irish jams that kind of drove me a little nuts as a classical person is that when I learn how to practice, we go home, we get out their basically Irish reel book or whatever, and you sit down with the song. or you've just heard the song a million times and then you just sit there and try to play it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to the jams, it kind of felt like this whole passing down of the songs and this this hundreds of years of music tradition of how we've been doing that, where you kind of pass it down to the next generation. They just sit there and listen and try it. And I felt like when I was at the jams, when you would, as a kind of veteran, would call out this random song that they don't know, you guys loop the song like 4 times or something, and then they kind of try to figure it out as they go.
Right.
And then the song's over, and then they don't hear the song for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then they come back again, and they sort of kind of try it for 4 times through.
Well, And I've learned many tunes that way myself.
Yeah. Well, but I just thought that seemed to me as a very slow way to learn a tune.
Well,
and that would be my argument against that. Can you set me straight on why
that's true. For me personally, I don't sit around and just try to learn as many tunes as I can. I mean, I know hundreds and hundreds of them throughout the years, and not just in Irish music, but like I say, lots of genres. But so I spend more time with like trying to concentrate on learning the tunes that are in my band.
Yeah,
because that's what's the priority.
Right.
And if I go to a jam and somebody plays a tune, I might like it, and I think, oh, I'd like to know that, but it's not a high priority. So if I learn it while each time I go to a jam and I hear it again, I'll try and figure it out. And sometimes, a lot of times I'll figure it out eventually that way. I've never ever looked at the sheet music or anything. I just learned it by just hearing it over and over again. But I'm not in a hurry to learn it. I mean, some people come and they're like, God, I don't know.
What is that song?
I don't know anything, and I need to learn these. Well, the best thing is to bring a recorder, a little digital recorder, and set that in the middle, and just let it go throughout the whole thing. You might say after a tune is done, you say, "What was the name of that one there?"
They tell you, go home and learn it.
They'll tell you, and you've got the recording of it then. Yeah. And then you could go home. There's a really great website called thesession.org.
Oh yeah.
It's got everything.
Good resource, yeah.
Yeah. So you can find the music to it. They'll have a little MIDI file if you need to listen to it. You can always go on YouTube and type in that song, and you'll hear countless people playing it. Yeah. Some people even showing you, teaching it on there.
Yeah. And that's homework. I mean, you're talking about doing actual homework now.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing about just sitting there and you're hearing the song 3 or 4 times, and then the song's done, and then you just wait for the next song, and you know that there's some people that sit there and they I'm sorry to say, but they hack through that song, and then they hack through the next song, and they don't really. It feels like to me, and this is where I'm going to argue against them, is that they kind of barely hack through all of them, and they haven't really learned any of them today. And and it does happen. And what is funny is the other person sitting next to you, they're hacking too. And so when you hear those songs, sometimes you aren't really hearing the real song because you got 6 of you guys that are blasting through the song, and it's good. Then you got the other 4 trying to figure it out on top of it, and you're, so.
Well, I know personally when I'm trying to learn a tune like that, if I'm hacking through it, I try not to play very loud. I mean, I've got my fiddle up here, and I'm playing just loud enough that I can hear it, because I want to hear them. I don't want to just hear myself. I want to hear them mainly, and then if I kind of find out, okay, it's in the key of D, and we're going to be playing these notes here. And
goes up to E on the bridge, E string, and then down.
Right. Yeah, you start kind of feeling the patterns of where it's going, and then the next day, we have. I mean, there's quite a few sessions that go on. If you go to all of them, you stay fairly busy.
No, sure.
I mean, almost every weekend there's something going on, and so if you want me to list some of them, I can.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like, there's one coming up this Friday. The last Friday of every month. It's a distillery in North Kansas City called Restless Spirits. They have a jam, starts at 6:00, goes till whenever, 8 or 9 o'clock to when it ends. The second Saturday of each month, there's one at Prospero's bookstore upstairs. That starts at 7:00 and goes till about 10. There's one at Conroy's Public House, which is at 95th and Knoll area. That's twice a month. They had it just last Saturday because I went to that. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly which weeks they do it. There's one every Sunday night in Lawrence, a place called Henry's Upstairs on 8th Street by Mass. And
Sure.
yeah, really fun jam. I just went to that last night. It was a lot of fun. I think that's kind of about
Does
all.
Scott still do his? He did one for a while. Scott McLuhan or whatever his name was.
I wouldn't call it just an Irish jam like
Right.
that. I mean, he has several different.
The church or whatever it was.
Yeah, I've never actually gone to it.
Yeah.
I think they tend to read more out of books.
Yeah.
A lot, you know.
Maybe a little bit more for teaching mentality,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of another interesting thing is that some of them are kind of different. You know, there's a lot of, for example, there's a lot of blues jams in town that are about the same thing. You know, it's different people, but it's all the same jammers. It's, you know, they play, you know, blues, shuffle, you know, shuffle, funk, slow,
Right.
and it's all the same, you know.
Right.
But then there's some other ones that are just like, you know, a little bit more rock at this jam, or and his I've seen when I went to his was a little bit more, you know, at this jam, we're going to not really care that we're going like 300, you know, beats a minute.
Right.
You better deal with it. You know,
Right.
we're going to just blast through this, and this is for the, you know, kind of heavy hitters. And
Right.
there's other ones that are a little bit more nice to you. And,
Right.
you know, all right, we're going to go a little slower on this. And then the fourth time we play, we'll kick it up and then give you a chance, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, so that's
Well, the other thing about the Irish jam sessions is that sometimes we'll play just one tune and end.
yeah.
But generally, you try to put sets of tunes together. Usually
That's
2 to
neat,
3,
yeah.
sometimes 4 tunes in a row. And those are kind of things like, you know, you work on those at home, trying to, you know, put those together yourself, and then introduce them to the people there. And then we get to where we kind of have standard sets. And every town, you know, I know that whenever you go to another city and you go to a jam session there, they'll have kind of their own,
Yeah.
you know, order of things that they do. And usually with the etiquette part of it is like whoever starts the tune, you'll generally play through a tune 3 times. If you want to go more, you might say one more time.
Yeah.
If you go after that one's done, everybody else in the group should not try and start another tune. You kind of hesitate and wait and see if the person who started that first one, if he's going or she is going to start another tune, because they might have a set in mind that they're wanting to do.
Yeah.
And
That's
it's
cool.
and it's kind of rude to just butt in and start playing another tune.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens, but you know, and then sometimes you might go, "Oh, I'm sorry," you know, and let it go. But so you kind of let that person guide that particular set of tunes till that's
cool.
done. And then people might say, "Well, what was the name of that tune or this one?"
And you have your little break. And,
and then another person, you know, that person who started it shouldn't start another one right away.
Right.
You should just wait and let somebody else. Or you might, you know, if everybody just stand around, you might say, "Hey, have you got you want when you're going to start?" And just ask somebody else who maybe doesn't come all the time, you know.
Yeah.
Try to get them out more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, get them more confident in playing and.
Yeah, so on Irish music specifically, the funny thing to me is that when you ask them, and this is kind of a difference between like jazz, for example, where a lot of these jazz tunes, you can't ask like who did the original, like we know, you know, Coltrane did this tune, it was on, or Miles did this tune, it was on Kind of Blue, and it sounded like this, and here's what his solo was, this was the structure, etc. Well, sometimes I think it's really funny that all of these folk tune kind of stuff have been passed down. I mean, some of these tunes are 400 years old or something, or you know, Renaissance era or something, you know. And so the Irish tunes maybe. And so one thing that's funny is that when you ask somebody and they're like, "This song is called Mary Blacksmith," or you know, Johnny on the Apple, blah blah blah, you know, so it's even funny when they try to. The song that I think I have to say that I've heard the most different versions of is Whiskey Before Breakfast. I hear that, I've never heard that the same way. Everybody does a different little, you know, and the other one's, you know, and so like, that was kind of a unique thing about Irish music, and maybe even bluegrass music would fit in that category of, like I said, in jazz, if you want to do it like the original, there's not a question. We can go back and there's is
Sure.
a
Well, that's like
actual
classical
recording. There's or even classical. You know, we have a pretty good idea of what an original would sound like.
Right.
Then, if you want to say, screw Miles, I'm going to do this now a different way.
Make it my own.
We can actually make a choice there.
Mm-hmm.
But in bluegrass, because we've just had this history and that we don't even know how the original went. Can you like talk about that? How unique that is?
Yeah. Well, I'd say bluegrass is more modern. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know how Bill Monroe called it the Monroe Doctrine.
Okay. Yeah.
He had a way that he wanted things done.
Yeah.
And the instruments, in fact.
Yeah.
And the guitar did not take breaks. He just strictly rhythm. So I mean, that was kind of the old school way of doing it. And there's bands today who still do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's their goal is to be that Monroe, the old style of bluegrass. In old time music, which is kind of a in between.
Right.
This is the stuff that was down in the Appalachian Mountains.
Yes.
You know, the people were playing, and I mean, even the way they spoke down there, because they were trapped down in these hollers a lot of times. They didn't get out much, and they still spoke probably the way they did in Europe way back, right? And the music, you know, they started changing a lot. I mean, old time music is it's a lot of Irish tunes, but it really changed into a more American style of playing, and it was heavily influenced by the African that were playing it too. They were playing it just as much, and they had syncopation in their music, which the Europeans didn't.
Straight, yeah.
And so old time music is heavily syncopated. And the other thing about old timey music, when you go to a jam, you might say, "Well, I'm going to play Julianne Johnson." Well, then another person will start it, and it'll be a totally different version. You can't even play it with them.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, whoa, that's another tune.
Yeah.
Has the same name, but it's a totally different tune.
Yeah.
In Irish music, generally, if you're going to say, "Well, I'm going to play the Kest jig," I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And
it's more straight ahead.
It's more, bit. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much laid out. It's like this. Now you can have variations. I mean, that's kind of the goal is to be a good player is to learn variations to the tune. But it does not. You know, you can play all those variations with everybody else jamming, and it's not going to throw everybody off. It's going to be right in sync with them. Yeah. In fact, a lot of times when you're doing it, you do a little variation, and somebody next to you hears it, and they go, "Ooh." And smiles, you know. Oh, I'd like to learn that. That's cool, you know. But it doesn't like throw everybody out of kilt, you know.
And I know when I was going up there, they were trying to explain to me that there's kind of like beat wise, and they were trying to say that there's kind of like 3 or 4 typical styles of tune, and so they were talking about the jig is one.
Yeah,
they're saying like the reel is sort of another.
So they're all based around dance,
right?
Yeah. So you gotta if you really want to get into Irish music and know like why are we playing it like this, and these speeds, this kind of thing, you need to watch the dancers. Yeah. So take a jig, you have.
We sometimes forget about them, don't we? Yeah. Pretty bad.
They're very important to this. Yeah. And so getting a chance to play for dancers is fantastic.
Something else.
Oh yeah, because you have to play for them. They don't care about all your fancy.
Slow it down.
Or speed it up.
They gotta need it at that perfect tempo.
Yeah, exactly.
Them up real bad.
Yeah, so you learn like when you play a hornpipe, this is the tempo they want it at.
Yeah, hornpipe is another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the slip jig one?
Well, I was going to tell you, there's 3 kinds of jigs. The most popular is what's called a double jig in 6/8. Then you have one that's less common, a single jig, or something they call them slides. They'll be in a 12/8.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you have your slip jig. All these are round dances, of course. And then slip jig is a 9/8.
Yeah, so it's going to be more of a 3 kind of pattern.
All of them are in a 3s pattern.
Yeah.
Then you have reels, which is, of course, a reel is a dance. That's in 4/4. That's going to be real common to you're into your old timey music or bluegrass music.
Right, very similar.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you have hornpipes, which are also in 4/4. Now in bluegrass music, they play them just like a reel. And Irish music, you play them like a hornpipe. So it has a different kind of a feel about it and how you play it. You have to listen to it a bit. I mean, a lot of this did take some study
Sure.
to learn the little intricacies about
Yeah.
it. Then you have polkas,
Yeah,
which are in
right.
2/4, of course. You have waltzes, obviously in 3/4. There's
So
some
there's a couple.
There's
Yeah,
some
there's a
odd
couple.
odd things too. There's called mazurkas, highlands. They're all kind, but they're not played as much. You know, every now and then somebody will.
So then a shokin would be like a waltz.
Yes.
Right. That would be more of a slow waltz,
Right.
I guess. Yeah.
Right.
Rather
And that's
than,
where- that's
than
a
like a
modern-
ballad. You could
Yeah.
call that more of a waltz than a ballad. A shokin farewell is something
Right,
talking about.
right.
Pretty famous 70s tune, not
No, it's
not
it's not
Civil
traditional.
War tune. Yeah,
No,
yeah. But anyway, yeah.
And the last tune, which doesn't get played hardly at all in sessions, is an air.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And really, it's not. And that is one of them that has not for dances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're beautiful. I mean,
Yeah. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So with for somebody who, I'm really always interested in talking to fiddle players because I'm a fiddle player myself, and I'm a person that really likes to dive out into a lot of different kinds of music. I just think it's really neat to be able to go to an Irish jam and have at least 5 tunes that I could go call and do something with them, or a blues jam or a jazz jam and have something to do. But definitely the one thing that I have not done very much of is like bluegrass Irish style fiddling. I just have not done much of that, and I know that it's kind of a different style, and I know that a lot of times I know that, especially like a bluegrass tune and they want me to go do a solo over it, I know that I can just go do Rob over this bluegrass. You know, I'm not even worried about that. You know, it's a 3-chord tune. You know, I'm just gonna go do something. It's fine.
Right.
But I know that I'm not gonna be. I know in my head that I'm not a fiddler. You know, I'm more of a if I'm any kind of a fiddler. I've been in 3 or 4 pretty heavy gigging country bands now. I'm a country style fiddler, not a bluegrass fiddler.
Right.
So fiddling wise, like talk about fiddle a little bit. Is there something that you see a lot of fiddle players doing that they could be doing better, or something that you like to do, or you can?
Well, I'm
answer
not a
that
bluegrass fiddler.
Right.
So when I was doing bluegrass, I was mostly playing mandolin.
Okay.
And
But
that's-
even Irish music
well,
is, yeah.
and the time that we worked together for Michael Ann when she came to town, she asked me if I could put a band together. She's a bluegrass country singer that lives in L.A. She came here for the Folk Alliance a few years back, and so I knew she was going to play guitar and I'd play mandolin, so I needed a bass and a fiddle. So I called you to do the fiddle, and so most of her stuff was kind of that bluegrassy country music, you know. And you know, it's not like you had to be a real bona fide bluegrass fiddler to do it, you know. But so,
yeah, and that's what I did at that time. I kind of just, I'm like, Rob, blah, there you go, you know, that's what it is.
Right. So I feel pretty comfortable playing, you know. I mean, I still wouldn't call myself really even a bluegrass mandolin player anymore because it's been so many years that I've really spent time doing that, and I can kind of get my chops up like I did for that show. You know, you just kind of, you know, get in there and do some
Woodshed,
yeah. But I just don't spend much time with it anymore. So as far as fiddling tips and Irish music, I mean, I think with all this folk music, the reason it sounds, when somebody says, well, that sounds like Irish music, or that sounds like French Canadian music, or that sounds like Cajun music, the biggest part of it is the bowing. So the rhythms that you have to create with your bow is what makes it danceable, what makes it get you feeling the music, you know, is all in that bowing technique. And I think that's where a lot of people, they tend not to work so much on that, or they don't realize how important that is.
Yeah.
You know, they're learning the melody, getting all the fingering down right, but they don't work on the bowing technique. And
So an example of that I just thought of is the idea, and I've seen this in one of the Irish tunes that I was working on one time, was, okay, so you have a riff that goes like da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 da, you know, something like that. What somebody might do is all separate da 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 da, and instead dee da 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 dee da da, you know, and you do that, you change that down bow or up bow right on the da 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 dee da da, and right on the fourth.
well,
on that fourth V,
a lot of you know, when you're doing the downbeat, you're usually going to be doing a down bow.
Sure.
And then when you come up, you tend to slur some notes.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah,
that.
right.
So you want this, 'cause what you're wanting to do with, whether you're picking it or bowing it, is you want to have this balance of hard and soft sounds. You can't have all the one. And when you bow every single note, every note sounds hard.
Yeah.
And if all you do is
It's
slur,
even, right?
it's
all
very even,
Yeah,
but it's like
yeah.
mechanical sounding, you know. If all you do is slur notes all over the place, it sounds wishy-washy.
And all even too in a different way.
Yeah, and then you lose all your rhythm.
Yeah.
So you've got to balance that with that bowing certain notes and then slurring some, and bowing some and slurring some. And that's what gives, you know, the swing
Right.
to it and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and same way with picking. You pick hard on certain notes and softer on others. You know, obviously you can't slur.
Right. And that'd be your accents, right? On the picking,
Yes,
you'd have a
yeah.
huge amount of accents,
Right.
choosing whenever you want to do them
Exactly.
appropriately. Yeah.
Right, right.
So, like when I was trying to play them, I really, well, just in general, I like slurs. I slur a lot. Like I really try to make my playing very smooth, probably sometimes even to a fault. But when I played, especially a lot of the jigs, you know, it just felt like. You know, I'm like, that sounds like crap to me, you know. You know, it just, you know,
Yeah.
and it just like even some of the reels too. It's like I felt like I want to slur a lot of this, but then I got myself into maybe a too much slurry, like you just said. There can be too much. Like,
Yeah.
So you think generally people don't use enough slurs, or
They just don't
when?
concentrate, I think, on the bowing, or they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, and when I'm teaching people, one of the main things I really want to stress is like, let's not worry about all the ornamentation. That's one thing in Irish meets. There's lots of ornaments.
Yeah.
And they have bowed triplets. You have grace notes. You have rolls.
Turns.
Yeah, there's all kinds of little fancy things that you can do, and a lot of people that's the thing they really want, because they hear that and they think that's what's really cool. But
That's what makes me look cool.
yeah, but when
Yeah.
you can learn all that stuff, but if you don't have the rhythm, it's for nothing. You know, it doesn't do anything. And there's this old time player. His name was Tommy Gerald, and I saw an interview with him, and he goes, one time I had this feller come down here. He could play 1,000 fiddle tunes, or he knew 1,000 fiddle tunes and couldn't play one of them. So yeah, knowing the tune doesn't mean you can really play it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And so you're making a good point, because I was going to ask you a little bit about those little nuanced things, and I think I even came up to it at a jam. I was like racking my brain, you know, not that hard, but I was just like, okay, how does he know when to throw those in? You know, and of course I kind of knew in my head that I know this is what it is. There is no rule. You kind of got to feel it and you throw it in. But you came to a conclusion right there that a whole bunch of classical people came to too, that you can't, your $6,000 guitar doesn't mean nothing if you can't play.
Right.
You know, if you don't know the tune already, these ornaments are going to sound really bad.
Right.
So you know, and you kind of can. I always tell my students that there's basically a whole bunch of, there's about 6 parts to every single song. You have your pitch, you have your rhythm, you have your, for us, bowing, you have the dynamics, you have the articulation, you have the tone, you have the, you know, there's these parts, and so like. What we'll notice is that that's like dealing. The ornamentation is kind of another element other than those, but let's say that's like the articulation. Let's say I would like to teach somebody that you've got to figure out what the heck these notes are in the song. That's like priority number 1.
Right.
Then you get the rhythm.
Right.
Then maybe bowing is the next one.
Yeah.
Once you deal with all that, now you can actually like adjust yourself. You can bring it down in dynamics, add these ornaments, but...
Well, you think, what is an ornament, you know? It's not everything. I mean, if you don't have a tree to put it on, the ornaments...
Yeah, right.
So you've got to have a foundation,
right.
you know, for these ornaments to hang on to. You know?
Yeah.
So the picking or the bowing, being a multi-instrumentalist, I teach a lot of pickers and stuff too.
Right.
So you've got to get that rhythm going, and you can set in any jam and not play one ornament. If you've got that rhythm going, that means everything.
But you sound pretty good.
Huh?
You sound pretty good, even without the. A person, they sound good.
I mean, nobody will miss the ornaments.
No.
Because if they hear that rhythm coming through strong, that's where it's at. Yeah.
I heard my teacher at school said, like, her quote was like, it was pretty harsh, but it's like, man, if you don't play in tune, nobody wants to play with you. Or nobody wants to hear you, was her quote. And it was, you just got to tell people that, but I would put another one on top of that if you have really bad rhythm, nobody wants to play with you.
Right.
And it's harsh to say that to like a fourth grader, but is it not true?
In the last couple of sessions I've been in fact, as we're playing and stuff, I noticed somebody's out of tune. I don't know who. I know it's not the accordion player.
And it's not the drummer.
Right. So, like after we get through with them, I should say, hey, could everybody just take a minute and just check their tuning?
Yeah.
Because something's off. I don't know who. I don't really care. But let's just all. I mean, it might be me. I want to figure. Let's just figure this out. And then once we do that, it's like, oh. I mean, it's just a load off my mind and just
see. And so that leads me to another thing. So that's back to a Winfield problem. So we when we go down to Winfield and it's like 51 degrees outside or 30 degrees, and we all want to be there really bad, but everybody's totally out of tune.
Yeah.
I noticed there's something like kind of, and maybe it's just because I go down to Winfield a lot, but there's something like awesome and right about that. And I think you'll probably know what I mean, where like when everybody's barely out of tune, it kind of sounds right in a weird way.
Yeah.
And then I noticed the same kind of ideas when I went home and practiced the Exile Variant or all these songs. When I bring them back, and perfect is not a good word, but they sound too clean. They sound like a classical player is playing an Irish tune.
Right.
And then when my ex-girlfriend would get up and play it, I'm like, this sounds right. Like, it sounds like authentic, and, again, perfect is not a bad word. It's not a good word. Like, it's too perfect, but it's definitely too clean. And so there's like a weird thing that I've noticed there about the uniqueness of like Irish music compared to classical.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of Irish players, too. I mean, there are really great players I highly respect that play very clean. Got incredible technique. There's other players that kind of play what I would say. Well, I would just say they sound more like the old style. If you listen to old recordings, especially the rural players, I mean, it's just like old time music too. I mean, it's kind of like you listen to those old guys, those old field recordings.
It's real raw.
It's really raw. Yeah. Those guys were not polished players. They never had a lesson in their life. Studied anything. They just had raw talent and they sound great. It's a different kind of a sound.
Yeah.
And it is a little rougher around the edges sound. And that can, I mean, that's real appealing too, So I mean, there's all these different levels and ethnic styles too. I mean, of our different part. I mean, every part of Ireland, every county has their own thing. Yeah, they have their own little dialect, and then they all have their own little way of playing the tunes. Especially, the fiddlers have a different way. Some of them use a whole lot more bowed triplets than others, or some of them, use more rolls and all that. And we don't even know, 200 years ago what they were doing. Right. We don't know if they were even doing these ornaments then. Possibly that's something that was just created in the last 100 years or something.
Yeah. I think that also is what like we've kind of been saying is that's the uniqueness of that type of genre is that that's what's so great about classical is that we can't classical to me is like math. It's like there's not you can't argue if there's a right answer here. Beethoven had spiccato. It's F sharp. Don't just deal with it. This is what it is. But then this other is more like philosophy or something where it's like there's not always a right answer.
Well, I always tell people it's very much like language. just like I said, the dialects, and our language changes all the time.
Yeah.
We don't speak the
That's
way
a
we
good
did
point.
100 years ago, 200 years ago. They didn't speak like they did then. I mean, things change. I mean, the words we use change. The names we call each other. I mean, some names go in and out of favor throughout the years. I mean, names we name our kids and all that.
Right.
And so, music does the same thing,
Yeah.
especially if it's folk music, because it has that freedom to change. Yeah,
that's
it can blues is a folk music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed a lot. You think with the very first blues players were playing all acoustic guitars until some of the guys went to Chicago and Muddy Waters and then started playing electric guitars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that just opened up a whole
Right.
new
I mean, that's a whole different deal.
whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's changed ever since then,
Yeah.
And so all folk music does that. We can't just keep it in this one place. I mean, the only reason we can kind of keep it, and some people want to keep it in a certain place, is we do have recordings now of what guys were doing in the 1920s.
Yeah.
And
At least
30s.
back to then, we can sort of hear. Yeah, but
We kinda-
1850,
We have
may
no
not
idea.
have no
We don't
idea.
really know. I mean, we can
Right.
guess,
Right.
but no, we don't really know.
So I got one more specific violin question for you. So with my students, I'll notice like when they go into orchestra, I can hear that their teacher is yelling, "Use more bow, all the time," meaning use a lot. And as a teacher, I know why they're doing that is because they've got 2/3 of the kids that are
Yeah, right.
so they're trying to. This is the extremes example in teaching where you want to bring them all the way to use way too much, and then you bring them back
Right.
to get them to do it at all. So I understand like conceptually why the teacher is doing that, but when I get my kids then into me and I can tell them like the real thing, I've noticed that especially on Irish music and definitely like fast jazz or, I'm literally sitting here like, you're doing nothing. I mean, you're just, it's all collé, it's all the fingers and like, I mean, you're doing zero. And have you noticed a lot of Irish players,
Well, there's some.
they
do that.
Not all of them, but have you noticed that a lot of students wanting to use a lot of bow or?
Yeah, to a certain degree. When I, with my own students, I mean, especially if they're beginners, and the first thing I do is just teach them how to play on an open string, and I want them to use the whole bow and try and play as slow as they possibly can and get the nicest tone as they can, going both directions.
Yeah.
Boring as hell,
Yeah.
but it's necessary to
Get a nice sound and
get control of that bow.
Yeah.
And then when you start to play, when you're playing like the jigs and reels, when you're playing something slow, obviously you can use more bow because you're sustaining a note longer. But if you're playing them really fast, you can't do that.
can't.
You've got to just be. I find that there's a sweet spot of the bow where you just let the weight of the bow do most of the work.
Yeah.
You're not lifting or pressing down.
Yeah.
You're just letting it go.
Yeah.
And that's what I think what's really fun is in that doing that.
I've noticed too another guy, the guy who runs all the public school orchestra teachers in Wichita. He was talking to me how a lot of the kids up here, they like to stay 2/3 out. And then all the kids in Wichita are down at the Frog.
Oh, really?
And he said it's just there's exceptions, but typical Wichita kids like playing at the Frog and I've noticed that. I went to some of the jams and a lot of these people are 2/3 to maybe even 3/4 out in the bow, very much close to the tip.
Yeah.
And in classical, I would, if it were me, I would tell all of them, play that crap right in the middle.
That's what I do. Yeah.
I'm
Right.
like, you don't go
That's
higher
that
than
sweet
that,
spot.
lower. It's the sweet spot,
Right.
And if you go here and you try to change tunes, your your thing is doing this, and the other way you're doing this. If you're out to, and if you have
The other thing about what I want to talk about is just your equipment. So in folk music, generally, now not so much in Irish, but in old timey and bluegrass, you'll tend to do lots of double stops. In Irish music, there's some, but not a whole lot. But I tend to, my bridge is pretty flat. Classical players I know want more of an arch. I mean, mine's not totally flat. I mean, but it's the guy,
it's flat.
a classical player looks at it and goes, "Oh my God, how do you do that?" But to me, I don't have to move very far to get from one string to the next. And so for that kind of music, I think that helps a lot.
Oh, sure.
Having that. setup is important on an instrument, of course. I mean, especially if you've got somebody who's a beginner, you want to help them as much as you can. Is like getting them a nice bow, make sure they got good hair, and maintenance. You know, how much rosin to put on. You get too much rosin caked on your strings, and it's going to sound crappy. So you got to learn to do all that, because my students will come to me and they'll go, "It just sounds awful. What's wrong with this thing?" I'll look at it and I'll go, "I'll wipe the strings off with a cloth. Okay, now try it."
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not, this time you're actually right. It's not the player.
Right.
Like they're like, "What's wrong with it?" Well,
right.
Your fingers aren't even close to on those tapes.
So just like, I mean, I think for a student just to learn all of that kind of stuff will help them to know that it is them or not. You know, am I really sounding crappy, or is it the instrument?
Right.
You know,
because sometimes it is the instrument. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So last big question for you that I'm always kind of fascinated by is, a lot of times it'll crack me up when I go down again to the Irish jams, and this guy will walk in and he'll have freaking 5 cases, and I'm just like, so you seriously like brought your whole house with you right now? You know, he brought the tenor banjo, right? And then he bought the bass mandolin, right? And then he bought his regular mandolin, and then his fiddle, and then his soprano guitar, and even, I'm just like, his alto bassoon. No, I'm just joking, but there's a lot of people that I've noticed like playing a lot of instruments, and that's not like that in the blues world. You have some guys that'll maybe play bass and guitar,
right?
But they'll be really clear about which is their baby. I am a guitar and I kind of bass.
Yeah.
So you've been one of the few that I've made a pretty good argument that when I hear you on, I think I've heard you on some sort of banjo.
Tenor banjo.
I've heard you tenor banjo, and then I've heard you on mandolin and then fiddle, and I've been pretty impressed about all 3. You're kind of blow the argument of that people can't be pretty good at multiple instruments if somebody were to feel that way. What's your opinion about that, about people playing a lot of kinds of instruments?
Well, it takes a lot of practice. So I notice if I don't practice my banjo, which I don't practice in as much as I do my others, a lot of it depends on the particular band that I'm in at that time, and what am I doing, what's my role in that band.
Yeah.
So a band that I was in a few years back, when it started, I was their only fiddle player, and so that's what, when an Irish band you need a fiddle most of the time. So I mean you kind of stay with that, and then I introduced one of my students who was getting really good, and we brought her in, and so then sometimes that kind of let me free to play more banjo or mandolin, and then sometimes we'd have twin fiddles, which is a nice effect too. And then we brought in another fiddle player from out of state, who one of the guys knew, and who was a really, really great Irish fiddler. So then I pretty much just quit playing fiddle at all in that band.
Yeah, because you didn't need.
We didn't really need 3 fiddles.
Sure.
So that freed me up to play tenor banjo.
I can't believe you said that. You don't need 3 fiddles.
Right. Yeah.
It's not possible. No.
So that. And I'm fine with that. I don't have to be the fiddle player, or I don't have to be this or that. I mean, I want to do whatever I need to do to make the band sound better and make us feel more complete.
So I guess where I'm getting at, and I've talked to lots of people about this because this is kind of passionate for me, this topic, is the idea that, and this gets to a bigger question with our students, is when we have a lot of parents that want their kids in soccer and taekwondo and scouts and robotics, and then it's kind of reminds me of that same sort of thing when the guy brings 5 instruments in, and a lot of times I've heard some good arguments because I'm basically on the side of I want to learn violin and do multiple genres, but stay violin. So I'm kind of a multi-person in regards to music. I'm not pigeonholed. I do like everything, hopefully better than average. That's how I look at it. But I find it really hard when, like, I can't do fourths. It's not going to happen ever. I'm fifths, and my brain just cannot handle going to banjo, and now you deal with the thirds and like.
Right.
and like, but other people they can deal with that. But I just love it's interesting to me to hear the arguments, because there's a lot of good arguments to learning about other instruments, you know, and definitely I can sit here and talk about other instruments at least a little bit. I could have a clarinet conversation with somebody. I don't know as much as they do, but I know something about it.
Sure.
But definitely the argument of anybody in the symphony, you rarely see people in the symphony that are playing 4 instruments.
Right.
It doesn't happen very much.
Yeah.
And if they did, they've put some major time in on this instrument. And so I would argue that anybody who gets really good, anybody who's in college soccer has been playing soccer since they were a little kid. Anybody who's an engineer was in calculus sophomore year of high school. You know, they're on an advanced track, etc.
Well, there's
Prove me
also,
wrong with that.
I mean, we all have different gifts and abilities, and
it's a good argument.
So you have some people that, I mean, one instrument is all they can handle, you know, and I've thought about, you know, one time I thought about, well, should I learn how to play the penny whistle or something? And I maybe learned a tune or two, but I thought, no, I'm just going to stick with strings, you know. So I know that if I can do that, and I'm just going to stay with that. I don't want to like learn to play the piano or learn to play the. I mean, I know my limitations. So I think everybody's got to be realistic about what is it you can handle. You know, some people can handle a whole lot more than others. Some people can handle a whole lot more than I can handle. You know, and get really, really good at it at each one of them. So, but I think that people's brains work a little differently too. Some people can really, in a short period of time, put intense concentration into something and get pretty darn good at it.
Right.
Now they may not be as good as somebody who has spent their whole life doing that one thing.
A specialist.
But they can get pretty darn good at that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say that about athletes too, like Bo Jackson.
Yeah, and
you know.
My argument would be how many others have there been? You know, it's not too many. You know, but anyway, I mean,
but
that's a good.
Your average person out there. I mean, I think that well, for myself, I mean, when I started on guitar, I mean, I didn't play anything else for many years. So I got to where I knew guitar pretty well.
Yeah.
And doing that, you also learn a lot about music.
Sure.
So when I made the transition to going to a mandolin,
a lot of stuff you didn't have to relearn.
Yeah. I didn't have to learn how to pick.
Right.
Where
you
a fiddle
didn't have
player,
to learn rhythm. You didn't.
Right.
Now
when I went to go to the fiddle, that bow was the thing.
It was
That's
ridiculous.
that's hard.
It's horrible.
And then every time you like learn a different genre, I mean, a different country, what I would say, it has this other bowing style about it. You know, you kind of like.
But you already know your grip. Right, you already know your grip.
Right.
You know, so now you have only few things you have to learn, and that's a good point.
Yeah, but you've got to spend a decent amount of time listening to that music.
Yeah.
And you got to let it soak into your soul, so that you can sing it to yourself, and you know how does that beat go.
Yeah, it's deep in here now.
It's down in there, and so then that will come out through your instrument.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of people, again back to the multiple instruments, I think a lot of people, they want to play that other one because it's fun, you know. I mean, there's probably some that it's literally like a Michael Jordan kind of thing where you think I can't play that, really? Okay, I'm gonna prove it. You know, there's a lot of people that it's not really that. It's more of like, okay, I'll play this today, you know, and like, so that's where I kind of come back to. Coming from classical, we know very much that this end result of being awesome or having the song be awesome, there's a couple moments that I kind of need to not really worry about the fun of this right now. There's some times where I got to sit and practice some scales, and you got to accept the fact that there's a lot of it that will be fun, but sometime I need to like be done with the argument of is this fun, because it's all for a bigger goal.
Right.
And so that's when I would argue that I feel like a lot of these people that maybe are at the jams that want to try all these things, they're not coming from it from the same. And maybe I'm wrong too. I'm only coming from I want to be the best, or I want to be awesome, or I want to be. They don't care about being awesome. It's just fun.
Right.
You know, it's fun or awesome. I mean,
a lot of people have no intention of ever being on stage playing. You know,
it's all fun. Yeah,
it's just fun. I mean, that's the joy of their life. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what they can do and have fun with it. But they don't have those aspirations to want to. I mean, it's a lot of pressure playing on stage, you know. And
yeah, I love it.
well, yeah,
and you do too.
I
I'm
do
sure.
too.
Yeah.
But it's.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
And so this is like psychologically with my students, this is kind of another thing that maybe the last thing we'll wrap up with here is the idea that a really good argument against my argument is that, so I'm going to now tell them in general, not tell them, but basically tell them let's say if I had the opinion that you're wrong for playing 6 instruments and you need to pick 2 or pick 1, you'll be way better. Who am I to tell them now to stop their fun?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's kind of a bullshit thing for me to do.
Right.
You know, that's a BS thing for me to do, even if I'm right on the argument of they're never going to be the best player, splitting their time in 5 different instruments. But who am I to tell them that? I mean,
sure.
You know, that's a good. I don't know. You know?
No, I mean, if I was going to talk to somebody about that, I would just say, look, if you want to be a better musician, you might want to concentrate. Say, let's just concentrate on this instrument and get. I mean, not like you're going to be an expert, but get pretty good at it
For now, yeah.
Yeah, for now, and then, I mean, you have plenty of time. Let's get that down.
You got about 30 years left here.
Right.
You know, you got 60 years left, young
Right.
kid. You know, you have plenty of time.
Well, you know, and
That's a good point,
and it's easier with children. They're already in a mode of learning all the time. I mean, that's their job.
Yeah.
Is going to school, learning. They don't have a job. They don't have a day job. I mean, you know, outside of that, and a family to be responsible for. So their parents say, "Hey, we're having you do this." They do it. You know, as an adult, it's finding that time. I mean, I have students who, as adults, who've never played an instrument their whole life, and they want to play, and most of them quit after a while because they find out this is a whole lot harder than they thought it was going to be.
Especially fiddle. Screw that instrument, man.
Yeah.
Violin is not
it's
not
a tough
good
one
to start.
It's a tough one to start on. But I have a guy
cool.
right now who's making good headway, and he's never played anything before, and he's playing tunes, you know, now, and just a matter of months, really.
Yeah, well.
And but I can tell you know he practices. You know, this is something I tell people you've got to like look forward to getting home and getting that instrument. You know, you got to fall in love with this thing. You know, if you do that, you're going to be successful.
Oh yeah.
If it's something like I don't want to do it tonight, well, that's probably not going to happen then.
I think that idea is the one thing in classical that we kind of realize is that when you drop Schindler's List on somebody, like the music from Schindler's List, like this isn't fun, you know. Let's just be really clear. Like why we're doing this right now is not fun, you know.
Right.
It's kind of it's a whole different kind of fun. It's the challenge of it. It's the challenge of bringing this emotion to life and expressing that to people is what we're doing this for. And so the idea of getting this perfect is the fun. You know, and you have to kind of psych yourself out in classical to make that buy into that. You have to emotionally buy into that of making this the primary goal, not playing Mary Blacksmith for some party, which is actually real fun.
Right,
you know,
right.
it's just a different kind. And
Sure.
with what you're talking about motivating people is that's what happens when you go start doing arpeggios and all of this mindless, tedious crap we have to do in classical. Well, you have to come in with the mentality of I'm going to get this perfect. That's why this is going to be fun right now. Is I'm going to try to get as good a pitch as I can of my posture, and because you see a farther goal, you know, you see it, and so that's really hard for people, I think, because they want the especially trying tunes at tempo go, you know. It's you gotta slow that down, you gotta see a longer picture here of and I wonder if some people, if some students kind of miss that mentality and they only want the fun, but they don't see the trying to get it perfect as sort of like a game. You know, it's sort of like a game. How many notes can I hit this time? You know, like I don't know if you do that or not, but I, you know, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's always fun for me. I mean, practicing is fun.
You're right.
You know, and
Yeah.
and if practicing isn't fun, find some way of making it fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the goal is to be a whole lot better player. You know, and
Well,
and
see, that's what your goal is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I would argue that there's some people that's not their goal. You know,
Yeah.
their goal isn't to be a better player. It's all just fun. They don't care about improving.
well,
It drives me nuts.
right.
There's a lot of guys with the blues jam. I'll just
Yeah.
say it, you know, they've learned their
Yeah.
they've learned their 6 chords for their 3 or 4 keys.
Right.
They've learned the shuffle, slow, funk,
And you see them year after year, and they never improve.
and they don't want it. They've got it. They
Yeah.
can play the blues,
Right.
and they're not wrong. They got 800 tunes now.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning 3 keys in these styles, and they can
Right.
learn 800 blues tunes, but
Yeah.
they don't want to get any better. you
Right.
know?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, see, I know that I'm better than I was 5 years ago, you know, or even a year ago, because I'm playing tunes now that I couldn't play then.
Yeah.
That I attempted to play then, and I was just screwing them all up.
That's cool,
And now I
man.
can get through them and play them pretty well. So I know, like, the work pays off, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah, that's why it's just really worth it to go at it, because if you start doing it, I mean, there's a reason why you can't get in the symphony in like 20 years. I mean, there's nobody under 20 in symphonies. It's because
Right.
it just takes that long to get good.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's still some guys that go home and practice, and within 4 months they're playing tunes already.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, there is a trick, right? There is a trick to it in any instrument. You know, if
Right.
you go start doing stuff slow, do it in parts. You know, work
Right.
on your tone. Work on,
Right.
you know, if you do those tricks,
Right.
you can do it.
But what I try to do with my students is get them as feeling as successful as quickly as possible, so that they're having fun.
Yeah.
You know, the quicker you can get them to play a simple tune,
Yes,
the better.
that's the first step, right? I mean,
Right.
that's first.
Yeah. I mean, they got to do the other stuff first. I mean, you can't start just playing a tune you don't even know
You
where a
don't
note
know
is.
anything, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got
But
to.
within like a month or two, you
Yeah.
want a tune in their head already, right?
Right. If they put the practice time in, they can get there.
That's
Because
cool.
I've seen that happen. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, we're kind of out of time already. Say what your band name is again.
Our band name is called Into the Sun. We're on Facebook. We have a website called intothesunfolk.com. It'll have photos of us, videos, dates where we're going to be playing. We play every second and fourth Saturday afternoon at Restless Spirits Distillery in North Kansas City. Sometimes at Murray's Tables and Tap. It's kind of off and on, where we never know like when exactly the next. We just played there last Thursday, but I don't know when the next time's going to be. That kind of thing. Just out there plugging away. We're trying
Sure.
to get jobs more. Trying to get out of town too.
Right. Yeah. Everybody wants to
Do
get
some
better
festivals.
gigs and do some festivals and
Yeah,
stuff.
festivals are fun. I used to do that with another band I was
Yeah.
with, and that's a lot of fun getting to travel and play at these festivals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool, man. I know that when I came into those jams and was watching you play, I was very impressed. And I know that you're one of the people in town that I think musically, I think a lot of people respect, and so definitely keep it up from all of us. Thanks, I guess, and sure you guys would probably see Dave out playing and whatever. So Dave Agee, thanks, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
No problem. We'll be back next time. That's the show. All right, take it easy, guys.